Bach was taking great pains to put the motive in every single beat before this point, and then suddenly it's gone. Okay, why is that? This is a clue. It's like we're hunting for treasure in the Valley of the Kings. What is an invention, by the way? We could start slow. Well, I've mentioned this before, I think, but Bach, when he collected these inventions, he has this note at the beginning, and it says, and along with this, not only to obtain good inventions, ideas, but to develop the same well, above all, however, to achieve a cantabile style in playing, and at the same time to acquire a strong foretaste of composition. I think this is a pretty interesting statement, actually. So what is an invention? This translation gives a little extra interpretation. An invention is an idea. So what is the idea in this one? In the first one, what is the idea?
That first measure.
Yeah, it's this opening. That's the idea. Right? Is this a good idea? Yeah? Is it a good idea?
I don't think so.
Lars doesn't think so. Grace does. I mean, is it?
I think it's fine.
It's fine.
It's aggressively fine.
I like that. It's aggressively fine. Yes. It is eminently serviceable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. What's that? It works. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is not a particularly good idea. If you want good ideas, you go to Schubert. Schubert has lots of good ideas. Bach pretty much just takes whatever happens to be laying around and works with it. So one of the things that we admire most about Bach is his what we call economy. So his ability to take very aggressive, what did you call it? Aggressively
fine.
Aggressively fine, yes, very aggressively fine ideas, which are very average or even banal, and turn them into really interesting pieces. So in Bach, we learn that in order to write a good piece of music, you don't need an inspired melody. What you need is good technique. Okay? It's almost like a machine that you can plug in any idea as signal, and then that signal is processed, and then it comes out the other end as a compelling piece of music. So among the things we can learn from the inventions is exactly this. How do you take any idea and how do you work with it? And how do you build it into a compelling piece of music? The motive in the right hand is repeated exactly in the left hand, but down an octave, yeah? And then we hear it at the level of the dominant, and then again it's repeated down an octave, yeah? Good, okay, so how do we do a Roman numeral analysis of these two measures? I know that in the way we teach theory nowadays, we approach it from the standpoint of the chord and the chord progression, but the chords are just a byproduct of what? What? Melodies in combination with each other. When melodies are combined together, you get chords. And that's why we have chords in Western music. It's not because we start with chords and then go to melody. No, melody is first, and then the chords arise from the melody. So if the melody has an internal logic to it and good voice leading, that is the primary concern. This is a really important point, especially as we're trying to analyze a two-part invention, because a two-part invention is just two melodies. And there are times in the inventions where it's not at all clear what chord you might choose to assigned to that passage. If you do this, and then this, that's totally fine with me, yeah. Only in measure 3. What happens in measure 3 and 4? Okay, so what happens with regard to the harmony and the motive, and yeah, go ahead.
The motif kind of switches instead of going up and then kind of keeping that momentum, where it like goes up and then down, it goes down and then up.
Okay, good, yeah. So the original motive goes like that, right? But in measure 3, we hear, right? So what do you call that?
Inversion.
Inversion, yeah. So that thing there is an inversion of this thing. Right?
Good job, Bob.
Good job, Bach. You did it. Yeah. An invention is taking an idea and building a whole piece out of it. He's not just going to repeat the motive over and over again. He's going to do things to it, okay, in order to change it up and make it fresh each time. And one of the things he can do to it is he can play it upside down, so he can invert it. There's another thing he does to it, though, which happens already in measure, well, right here and here, which we should probably go back and make sure we take note of. And if you're taking notes, which I suggest, you could write this down. What does he do? What is the first thing he does to the invention, or to the motive? So the motive goes through a number of transformations throughout the piece, right? What's the first kind of transformation that he performs on the motive?
Transposition.
Transposition, yeah, transposition. So he can transpose it, especially at the octave or the fifth, but also at pretty much any other interval. Especially at the beginning, the motive will be transposed at the octave or the fifth. And then he can also do inversion, right? So there's two things now, two kinds of transformations that he can perform with the motive. Yes. Inversion is a process of using the same interval, but moving in the opposite direction, right? Yeah.
And you can have an idea, and then you can just select any note from it to do that inversion.
Yeah.
And it's still
Yeah.
edible.
Yeah. This inversion here starts on an A. Why does this start on an A?
It's a third up from the. Because it's the wait.
Okay, everybody think about this for a minute. Everybody think about this is good. Why does this statement of the motive, this inversion, start on A? Why does it start on A? Everybody think about that for a minute, and I will call on someone at random. My answer to this question of why is that an A there has to do with my favorite concept that I keep talking about over and over again, that starts with a V. Voice leading. Yeah, it's all about the voice leading. In measure 1, this melody leads very nicely to this D as a high point, right? And then that D leads nicely to G as a high point, and then that leads nicely to A as the highest point of all. In the first, in fact, yeah, we don't get higher than an A until many bars later. But do you see how that line in the right hand is gradually climbing up to that A as a high point? Yeah? And then from that high point, it comes down again. You see the trajectory there? Really nice sense of trajectory happening. Trajectory is another word for voice leading, I would say. And the A works because it kind of implies a 6, which can come after a 5. And also you could say that this measure is a 1 chord or a 6 chord. It's not obvious to me. Okay, cool. Voice leading, right? All right. So we hear the motive inverted. Good. What happens in the second half of measure 3 to the motive, if anything? In measure 3, this note here, the first note of measure 3, does not belong to the motive, right? So the motive starts on, why? Because the original motive actually starts with the 16th rest. Is the 16th rest part of the motive? That's an interesting question, right? Anyway, so the motive starts right there. And then this note, I'm going to say this note does not belong to the motive. And then it starts again right here, right? So, see that? So it's, and then, so the inverted version of the motive is stated again, but transposed down a third. Yeah? Okay, what happens at the beginning of measure 4 to the motive? Yeah, so it starts on a D, right? Yeah. Yep. Okay, good. Do we hear the motive in this half of the bar? Okay, good. So Regina just used a magic word. Did you guys hear it? What was it, Malaya? Sequence. Yes. Sequence is a magic word. Sequence. Ooh, right? What is a sequence? So a sequence is a bit of melody which is repeated, but down a step or down a skip, or up a skip or up a step. Skip, skip. Yeah? So this is a perfect example. This whole passage here is a perfect example of a sequence. And then so this idea is transposed down a third and stated again. And then it's transposed down a third and stated again, and then transposed down a third and stated again. Yeah? That's what a sequence is. What's good about sequences?
What's not good about sequences?
Sequences allow you to have good voice leading. But if we're going to try to analyze the chords, it seems like maybe there's a sequence every 2 beats, right? So maybe there's a new chord every 2 beats, right? So did anybody analyze this half of this measure as a chord?
I got 4 chords.
You got 4 chords in that measure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I might have gone a little crazy with it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that can happen. Yeah. I think to me, this moment is pretty important though. What happens there? Right? That's kind of important. It's a what? 7, yeah. 7 chord going to 1. Yeah. If you include the G over here, then that's a 5/7 chord, yeah. Yep. Good, okay. And then okay, so now clearly it lands on 1, right? We got that. But then what's going on over here? Suddenly we have an accidental in there, right? What accidental, where does that accidental come from? It's an F sharp. What's the significance of F sharp?
It's a raised 4th.
It's a raised 4th,
It's
yep.
a tritone.
It's a tritone from the tonic, yeah. 5 of 5, yeah. So the in the key of C, G is your dominant, right? And what's the dominant of G?
D.
D. And it has an F sharp in it. What about the second half of this measure? Is that also a D? So right here you get the F sharp and the C. And the F sharp and the C are the most important members of the dominant chord because it's the leading tone and the seventh. Yeah, good. So this whole measure then, except for the very beginning of it, which has got to be a 1 chord, it then immediately goes to 5, 7 of 5, right? Looks like you might be trying to modulate. All right, let's look at measure 5. What's going on in measure 5? First of all, do we hear the motive in measure 5? Second half of the measure, yeah? Good. And what transformations or permutations is he using for the motive here? What's he doing to the motive there? So he's transposing it to start on D. And he's including the F sharp because he's kind of moving to the key of G now. Yeah, yeah. You could put a G here, and you could analyze this as a 5 chord in G. Yeah, you could do that. That's a good idea. Yeah, good. So we have a transposition of the motive, and then here we have what? What is he doing to the motive there? Yep, exactly, yes. Inversion. Yep, inversion. Good. And it starts on an A. Why does it start on A? Well, you can always say voice leading, right? Because right, it just leads so naturally to that, but also because by starting on A, he's sort of staying in the D dominant 7 chord, right? So I would say he's still in a 5 chord here. Okay, good. Do we hear the motive in measure 6 at all? So that was kind of cool. Did you see that? Oh, wow, that's cool. Surprise and delight. That's what Apple.
I mean, I wouldn't say the full motif as a whole,
Okay.
and just like the second part of it. I do see a sequence going up.
Aha, okay. So in this measure we have, yeah, and that's a sequence. That's a tiny sequence. That's about as small as a sequence can be. Just 2 notes, right? And yes, this little pair of notes, this major third up, is kind of what's happening over here, isn't it, in the original motive? Right? So he's taking the second half of the original motive and inverting it and treating it as a sequence, right? Yes, Ryotaro.
Do you consider that fragmentation?
Ah, good. I was just going to talk about next. So, so far we've encountered 2 permutations or 2 operations or whatever you want to call it, transformations, that Bach can do with the motive, and they are transposition and inversion. And here we encounter a third kind of transformation or operation that he can perform on the motive, where he takes part of the motive. And Ryotaro is calling that fragmentation. Okay, so you should write down somewhere 3 things: transposition, inversion, and fragmentation. Why do you need to write them down? You are going to have to write an invention as well, or at least part of an invention, and you're going to need to know those 3 things, because you're going to be doing those 3 things to your motive, the motive that you write. Okay, good. Now, what happens here? Ooh, perfect square, so nice. So what happens in this half of the measure? You want to hear it one more time? What happens there? What does it sound like? Even if you're not sure, like, don't look at it too closely, just listen to the sound of it, right? What do you feel happening? Kinga.
Cadence.
Cadence. It's a cadence.
Very
yeah.
strong.
Very strong cadence. Yep. Okay, how do you know that it's a cadence?
I mean, I definitely heard it.
You heard it. You know it because you feel it. Good. That's a valid answer. Yes.
Yeah. Do you want me to say more?
Sure. Yes.
I mean, I feel like if I looked at it a little bit harder, it'd probably go 5-1.
Okay. There is a very strong.
So.
Sure. That's right. There's a very strong 5-to-1 chord progression that happens there. Yep. Good. What else? How else do you know that it's a cadence? Sarah. Oh, Sarah's not in the class anymore. That makes me sad. You miss Sarah. Sterling. Grace. Good. Okay, yeah, the 1 chord appears on the downbeat. So, so it's lining up correctly with the meter. And the 5 chord appears on beat 4, which is the upbeat, right? See how in 4/4 time, the 4th beat is an upbeat. It's particularly energetic, right? And it's leading to something. Just like the dominant chord with its leading tone, and its 7th is also very energetic and unstable. So when you line up the instability of the upbeat with the instability of the dominant 7 chord, you get the ultimate instability right before the final cadence, right? You see that? See how amazing that is? That's so amazing to me. It's so amazing that music can do that. Maybe I'm just weird for thinking that, but okay, good. So we got the right chord progression, we've got the right relationship to the meter. There's one other thing, really important reason why we know that a cadence is happening. All right, I'm gonna force you all to think about this for a minute. Grace, you're off the hook, but she's the only one who's off the hook. So I'm gonna call on someone at random. This is a really important point, which I tried to drill into us earlier. What's the other thing that's happening here that makes us really feel like there's about to be a cadence? It's not enough to have the right chord progression or the right relationship to the meter. There's one other really critically important thing you have to have. Ryotaro knows, I can tell. Christian thinks he knows, but not as sure. Okay, who's the lucky winner? Bridget. Oh, she's lucky she's not here. Christian.
Is that to do with breaking the motif?
Ah, good point. Yes, this is the first time in the piece so far where there's no hint of the motive. We don't see anything even remotely related to the motive here, right? That's significant. That's a clue as to the reason, as to the other thing, the other really important element that's at play here that makes it feel like a cadence. Yeah. Suddenly we don't have any part of the motive. And it's like, well, Bach was taking great pains to put the motive in every single beat before this point, and then suddenly it's gone. Okay, why is that? This is a clue. It's like we're hunting for treasure in the Valley of the Kings in Luxor and found a clue as to the location of. Sorry, now I'm going a little overboard. All right, on the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Cadential formula.
Cadential formula. Cadential formula. Cadential formula.
Our beautiful analysis.
Cadential formula. Got it?
Yes.
Wait, what?
Can I make it any? Yeah, good. Right on cue, King. Good job.
Yes.
You get a gold star for that. Comedic timing, yes. Cadential formula. What is a cadential formula?
It is written.
What's that?
It's just a thing
It's just a thing.
that
Yeah.
exists.
No one knows.
No one knows.
Use it.
Cadential formula is this. That's a cadential formula. Also this. That's a cadential formula. Both of those are examples of cadential formulae. Formulae is the plural of formula, right?
Formulas.
Formulas. Okay. So what is a cadential formula? I've tried to explain it. Maybe somebody else can do a better job of explaining it. Jonathan, what is a cadential formula?
I mean, I guess it's just a common, like, motif or,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I guess motif that's used throughout Baroque music as a way to end a cadence.
Yeah.
So, like, it's like a part of the style. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm writing in this style of music, they do this in this style of music.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit of melody that occurs at a cadence point. It's a little melodic idea. Right? That's a little melodic idea. And that idea, that little melodic idea, gets used hundreds, if not thousands of times in Baroque music, not just by Bach, but by Pachelbel and by Buxtehude and by Scarlatti and by Vivaldi and by Handel and by who's the most obscure Baroque composer you can think of? Anyone?
The ones you said.
Okay. It's a little bit of melody that gets used thousands of times over and over again by all these composers to the point where listeners come to understand that when you hear that little bit of melody, you know that a cadence is about to happen. Okay, it's formulaic. We call it a formula because, or I like to call it a formula because it's formulaic. There's no creativity involved. You just plug in the formula. Okay? Like this, the one on the left hand is particularly common. That's this falling down of an octave on the dominant chord and then resolving up to the tonic. That's super, super common. It happens all the time. This is two examples of common cadential formulae. There are a number of them. There are probably dozens of cadential formulae. Okay, but there are only dozens. There are not thousands, right? There's a certain smallish collection of melodic shapes that can happen at a cadence, and they are important because they alert you to the fact that a cadence is about to happen. I think, Kinga, you said it's a cadence because I feel like it's a cadence, right? Or somebody said that. It feels like a cadence. Why does it feel like a cadence? Because you know these cadential formulas. It's so interesting to me that I can teach this class and I can explain what a cadential formula is, and many of you are still like trying to grapple with this concept. But on an intuitive level, you already know it. Every single cadential formula from the Baroque period is already logged in your heart. Right? It's a part of your being. You sense it when it's there, and you understand, oh, a cadence is about to happen, because you are already intimately familiar with all of the cadential formulas. What I'm trying to do is take that understanding from your heart and plug it into your brain now. Okay? So that when you write an invention, you'll be able to use a cadential formula to end it correctly. And you should have done that already with your canons, right? So if you didn't do that correctly, I might notice that in your assignments, and I might count off, and then you can correct it and return it in. Two quick questions. I'm in the habit of going over time. I've never done this before. All right, Kinga and Jess, and then the rest of you are free to go if you need to go, because we're out of time.